The sky above Earth turned dark, with shadows that did not belong to clouds. Admiral Chen Rivera stood in the command center of the United Earth Defense Headquarters, watching the holographic display with a face that showed no emotion. She had trained her whole life for moments like this, but nothing could have prepared her for what hung in the space above her planet. 200 ships. Each one was larger than any city on Earth. They floated in perfect formation around the planet, like predators circling wounded prey. The Galactic Empire had arrived, and they had not come to make friends. "Admiral, they're hailing us again," said Lieutenant Morrison, his voice shaking slightly. The young officer had been on duty for 18 hours straight, and his exhaustion showed in the dark circles under his eyes. Rivera nodded once. "Put them through." Now it showed the face of Imperator Zalthik, the military commander of the Empire's forces. His species looked almost reptilian, with scales that shimmered in colors humans had no names for. His eyes were cold and calculating, the eyes of someone who had conquered 1,000 worlds, and saw Earth as nothing more than number 1001. "People of Earth," Zalthik said, his voice translated into English by technology that made every word sound like a threat. "You have been judged by the Galactic Empire. Your species has reached the stars. This means you must now choose. Submit to the Empire and accept your place as a vassal world, or refuse and face complete annihilation. You have 24 of your hours to decide." The transmission ended before Rivera could respond. What could she say to a force that could turn her entire planet into dust? "Sir, what do we do?" Morrison asked. Rivera turned away from the hologram. Around the command center, dozens of officers waited for her orders. They all knew the truth. Earth's military had exactly 37 combat-ready spacecraft. Most of them were designed for patrol duty around the solar system, not warfare against an empire that had conquered half the galaxy. They had nuclear weapons, railguns, laser batteries, and every defensive system humanity had developed in the 70 years since they first left Earth's atmosphere. Against the Empire, it would be like fighting a hurricane with a paper umbrella. "We stall," Rivera said calmly. "Send a message to Zalthik. Tell him we need time to consult with our world governments. Request a meeting to discuss terms." "You're going to surrender?" Morrison looked horrified. "I'm going to buy time," Rivera corrected him. She walked to her private office and sealed the door behind her. Once inside, she pressed her hand against a panel that looked like ordinary wall. The panel scanned her palm, her retina, and her DNA in less than a second. A hidden compartment opened. Inside was a single communication device. It looked ancient compared to the holographic systems in the command center. Just a simple black box with a single red button. Rivera had carried this device for 15 years. She had hoped she would never need to use it. She pressed the button. 3,000 kilometers away, deep in a bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Sarah Okonkwo's own communication device began to beep. She was a small woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many secrets. She picked up the device and answered without saying hello. "Is it time?" she asked. "The Empire is here," Rivera said. 200 capital ships. They want surrender or extinction. "Then it's time," Dr. Okonkwo replied. Okonkwo confirmed. "I'll send the signal." "How long?" Rivera asked. 72 hours for full deployment. "But Sarah, are we sure about this? Once we reveal it, there's no going back." Rivera closed her eyes. She thought about her daughter, who was 17 and wanted to be a doctor. She thought about the billions of people on Earth who were going about their lives, unaware that an empire of aliens was deciding their fate. She thought about the terrible secret that only 2,000 people in the entire world knew about. "We're sure," Rivera said. "Activate Project Phantom Aegis. 500 million kilometers away, near Jupiter's Great Red Spot, something began to wake up. The storm on Jupiter had raged for centuries, a hurricane larger than Earth itself, with winds that could tear apart mountains. Deep inside that storm, Hidden by technology that bent gravity and light, something enormous had been sleeping. Captain Marcus Webb opened his eyes. Around him, 799 other people were also waking up from cryogenic sleep. They lay in pods that lined the walls of a chamber so vast it could have held a small town. Automated systems pumped warm air and nutrients into their bodies, bringing them back from the edge of death. Webb sat up slowly. His body ached in the way bodies do when they haven't moved in a long time. He was a tall man, with dark skin and eyes that seemed much older than his 40-year-old face. According to Earth's official records, Captain Marcus Webb had died in a training accident 8 years ago. His funeral had been attended by 200 people. His mother still visited his grave every month. "Status report," Webb said, his voice rough from disuse. A computer voice responded immediately. "Crew revival at 98%. Reactor stable. Weapon systems ready. Awaiting your orders, Captain." Webb smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting for this moment for a very long time, and was not surprised that it had finally arrived. "Begin emergence protocols," he ordered. "It's time to introduce ourselves to the Galactic Empire." Around him, the other crew members were climbing out of their pods. They were the best humanity had to offer. Pilots, engineers, soldiers, scientists, and tacticians. All of them had volunteered for this mission. All of them had faked their deaths and left behind everyone they loved. They had done this because they believed in one simple truth. Sometimes the only way to protect your home is to become the monster that guards it in the darkness. It had been built in complete secrecy over 40 years, constructed inside a hollowed asteroid, and then hidden inside Jupiter's storm, using technology that Earth scientists barely understood. The technology had come from a crashed probe that humanity had found 70 years ago, and never reported to the galaxy. That probe had contained secrets that changed everything humanity thought they knew about the universe. Now those secrets were about to save Earth, or destroy it. Webb wasn't entirely sure which. "Captain," said his second-in-command, Commander Lisa Park, "we're reading the Empire's fleet composition. 200 capital ships, standard formation. They're not even trying to hide. They think we're primitives." "They're about to learn differently," Webb said. "Set course for Earth orbit, battle speed, and someone send a message to Admiral Rivera. Tell her the Phantom Aegis is coming home." In orbit above Earth, Imperator Zelphic was growing impatient. The humans were stalling, asking for more time, proposing meetings and negotiations. It was pathetic. In his 1,000 years of service to the Empire, he had seen hundreds of species react the same way when faced with superior force. First came denial, then bargaining, then acceptance. It was always the same. His sensor officer interrupted his thoughts. "Sir, we're detecting an anomaly near Jupiter." "What kind of anomaly?" Zelphic asked, barely interested. "Unknown, sir. It's large, very large, and it's moving toward us." Zelphic felt the first stirring of something he had not felt in centuries. It might have been curiosity. It might have been concern. He ordered the main view screen to show Jupiter's location. What he saw made his blood run cold. Something was emerging from the great red spot, something that should not exist, could not exist. A ship, a human ship, and it was larger than anything the Empire had built in 500 years. "All ships," Zelphic ordered, his voice suddenly sharp with alarm. "Battle stations, now." But deep down, he knew it was already too late. The humans had been hiding a secret, and that secret was about to change everything. The UEDS Phantom Aegis moved through space like a predator that had been caged too long. It was 15 kilometers from bow to stern, a massive construction of metal and technology that represented 40 years of humanity's greatest secret. Its hull was dark, almost black, covered in panels that absorbed light and sensor waves. To the naked eye, it seemed to drink in the stars around it, rather than reflect them. Captain Marcus Webb stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back. Around him, holographic displays showed every detail of the Empire's fleet. 200 capital ships, arranged in standard formation. They were beginning to move now, responding to the Phantom Aegis's appearance. Webb could imagine their confusion and alarm. "Distance to Earth orbit?" Webb asked. 4 hours at current speed, sir," replied the navigation officer. "The Empire fleet is moving to intercept. They're forming a defensive wall between us and Earth." "Let them," Webb said calmly. "Weapons status?" Commander Lisa Park checked her displays. She was a short woman with sharp eyes and reflexes that had been enhanced by the same technology that powered the ship. "All systems green, Captain. Fold space cannons charged, drone bays ready, kinetic rail systems armed. We have enough firepower to crack a moon." Webb allowed himself a small smile. "Good, because we're about to show the Galactic Empire what happens when you threaten humanity." On the Empire flagship, Imperator Zalthik was receiving reports from his fleet commanders. None of them made sense. "The ship is 15 kilometers long?" he demanded. "That's impossible. Our intelligence said Earth barely has the technology for interplanetary travel. They can't build something that large." His chief science officer, a being that looked like a floating mass of tentacles, rippled with uncertainty. "Sir, the energy readings we're getting from that vessel are unlike anything in our databases. Their power source is radiating at levels that should be impossible to contain, and their weapons, we can't identify half of them." Zalthik felt anger rising in his chest. He had not lived for 1,000 years by underestimating his enemies, but he had definitely underestimated these humans. "All ships, maximum shields, prepare to fire on my command. I want that ship destroyed before it gets within range of our fleet." "Sir, they're already within range," the sensor officer said quietly. "What? That's impossible. They're still—" The Phantom Aegis fired. The fold space cannons were humanity's greatest achievement, reverse-engineered from the crashed probe they had found 70 years ago. They didn't fire projectiles through normal space. Instead, they created small tears in reality itself, allowing weapons to strike from angles that shouldn't exist. To the Empire ships, it looked like their vessels were simply exploding from the inside, as if reality itself had turned against them. 12 Empire capital ships died in the first 10 seconds. "Evasive maneuvers," Zalthik screamed. "Return fire! All ships, return fire!" The Empire fleet responded with overwhelming force. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and graviton missiles filled the space between the fleets. Enough firepower to destroy a dozen planets converged on the Phantom Aegis, and did almost nothing. The ship's shields flickered, but held. The gravitational cloak that had hidden it inside Jupiter's storm was now working as a defensive system, bending space around the hull and redirecting incoming attacks. Energy beams curved away harmlessly. Missiles exploded against barriers of twisted gravity. "Launch drones," Webb ordered. The Phantom Aegis's belly opened, and 5,000 autonomous fighter drones poured out like angry wasps from a kicked nest. Each drone was no larger than a car, but they moved with perfect coordination. They were connected through quantum entanglement, meaning they could communicate instantaneously across any distance. They thought together, moved together, hunted together. The Empire had never seen anything like it. Their fighter craft were piloted by living beings, with all the limitations that entailed. Reaction times, fear, hesitation. The drones had none of these weaknesses. They flowed through the battle space like a single organism, targeting weak points in the Empire ship's shields and exploiting them with ruthless efficiency. Commander Park watched the battle displays with satisfaction. Enemy casualties at 43 ships and rising. Our shields, are holding at 87%. Drone losses, minimal. Focus fire on their command ships, Webb ordered. Cut off the head, and the body dies. Dr. Sarah Okonkwo was watching the battle from Earth, her heart pounding. The holographic displays in her laboratory showed everything happening in orbit. She could barely believe what she was seeing. The Phantom Aegis, the ship she had helped design, was tearing through the Empire fleet like it was made of paper. But she knew the truth that nobody else did. The ship's power source, the micro-singularity reactor at its heart, was not stable. It was contained inside a magnetic field so powerful it could crush atoms. But that containment was not permanent. The reactor would eventually fail. The question was whether it would last long enough. Her communication device beeped. It was Admiral Rivera. "Sarah, what am I watching?" Rivera's voice was filled with awe. "You're watching Project Phantom Aegis do exactly what we designed it to do," Sarah replied. "Webb is following the battle plan perfectly." "How long can they maintain this?" Rivera asked. Sarah hesitated. "The reactor is stable for now. But Chen, every shot they fire, every second those shields are active, it drains power. They have days, maybe a week of full combat operations. After that, the reactor fails and the ship is dead in space," Rivera finished. "Does Webb know?" "He knows," Sarah said quietly. "They all know. They volunteered anyway." Back in the battle, Webb was proving why he had been chosen to command the Phantom Aegis. He didn't just fight the Empire fleet. He fought them in ways they had never experienced before. The Phantom Aegis would appear, strike, and then vanish into fold space, reappearing somewhere else entirely. The Empire ships couldn't predict where it would be next. Their sensors couldn't track it through the dimensional shifts. "Sir, the Empire fleet is trying to surround us," Park reported. "Let them try," Webb said. "Activate Protocol Swarm 7. The drones suddenly changed their behavior. Instead of attacking the Empire ships, they began moving between them, weaving an intricate pattern through the fleet formation. The Empire commanders tried to shoot them down, but there were too many, moving too fast. Then the drones released their payloads, thousands of small objects, each one accelerated to a significant fraction of the speed of light. Relativistic kinetic strikes. When something hits you at that speed, shields don't matter. Armor doesn't matter. The kinetic energy alone is enough to punch through anything. 30 more Empire ships died in an instant. Imperator Zalthik watched his fleet dying and felt something he had not felt in his entire military career. Fear. Not fear of death. He had faced death many times. This was something worse. Fear that he had fundamentally misunderstood the nature of his enemy. "All ships, full retreat," he ordered. "Fall back to defensive formation Beta. We need to regroup." But Webb wasn't going to let them regroup. The Phantom Aegis pursued, its weapons never stopping. The ship moved through the battle like a dancer, graceful and deadly. Every movement was calculated. Every shot was precise. This wasn't just superior technology. This was superior strategy, superior tactics, and superior will. 47 minutes after the battle began, 68 Empire capital ships were destroyed or disabled. The rest were in full retreat, jumping to faster-than-light travel as quickly as their engines could charge. Imperator Zalthik's flagship was among the last to leave, and as it jumped away, its sensors recorded one final image of the Phantom Aegis, floating alone among the wreckage, victorious. On Earth, billions of people watched the recordings of the battle. They had been prepared for surrender or extinction. Instead, they had witnessed something impossible. A single human ship had defeated an empire that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. Admiral Rivera sat in her office, watching the same recordings. She should have felt triumph. Instead, she felt a cold weight in her stomach. She knew this wasn't over. The Empire would come back with more ships, more weapons, more determination. And the Phantom Aegis couldn't fight forever. Her communication device beeped. It was Webb. "Admiral," he said, his face appearing on her screen. Phase 1 complete. The Empire knows we can fight. Now comes the hard part. The hard part? Rivera asked. Webb's expression was grim. Now we have to win the war, and we have to do it before our reactor fails and everyone discovers the truth. We're not invincible, we're just desperate, and we're very, very good at pretending. The transmission ended, and Rivera was left alone with her thoughts. Outside her window, she could see people celebrating in the streets. They thought the danger was over. They thought they had won. They had no idea the real battle was just beginning. The Galactic Empire did not accept defeat. 3 weeks after the first battle, 600 warships arrived in the solar system. They came from every corner of the Empire, pulled from garrison duties and border patrols. This was the largest military deployment the Empire had launched in 300 years. The message was clear. Humanity would be crushed, no matter the cost. Imperator Zalthik was dead, killed when his damaged flagship suffered a reactor breach during the retreat. His replacement was High Commander Zentar, a being whose species looked like living stone, hard and unyielding. Zentar had studied the recordings of the first battle 100 times. He had analyzed every move the Phantom Aegis made, every weapon it used. He would not make the same mistakes as his predecessor. The humans have one ship, Zentar said to his fleet commanders. One powerful ship, yes, but it is still just one ship. It cannot defend their entire system. Attack their colonies on Mars. Destroy their mining stations in the asteroid belt. Force this phantom ship to choose what it will protect. Then we will destroy everything it does not. The strategy was brutal but effective. The Empire fleet divided into smaller groups and struck at every human settlement beyond Earth. Mars Colony 7 was the first to fall. 5,000 people died when Empire ships bombarded it from orbit. The colony's defensive shields lasted exactly 14 minutes before collapsing. On Earth, Admiral Rivera watched the reports come in with growing horror. The Phantom Aegis was racing from one crisis to another, arriving just in time to save some colonies, but too late to save others. Webb and his crew were fighting harder than she had ever seen anyone fight. But they were only human. Even enhanced humans needed sleep. Even the most advanced ship needed time to repair damage and reload weapons. "How many have we lost?" Rivera asked her staff quietly. Lieutenant Morrison consulted his display, his face pale. 3 Martian colonies destroyed, 2 asteroid mining stations, 1 orbital research facility. Total casualties estimated at 23,000 civilians. Rivera closed her eyes. 23,000 people. Men, women, children. All dead because the Empire wanted to make a point. All dead because one ship, no matter how powerful, could not be everywhere at once. Her communication device beeped. It was Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, and she sounded frantic. "Chen, we have a problem," Sarah said. "The reactor readings from the Phantom Aegis are getting worse. Webb is pushing the ship too hard. The microsingularity is becoming unstable. If he doesn't slow down, if he doesn't give the systems time to cool and recalibrate." "How long do they have?" Rivera interrupted. "At this rate, maybe 2 weeks, maybe less." Rivera felt her stomach drop. "Does Webb know?" "I've sent him the data. He's not responding to my messages. Chen, I think he's ignoring the warnings on purpose. I think he's planning something." Before Rivera could respond, alerts began flashing across every screen in the command center. Morrison called out, "Admiral, the Phantom Aegis just broadcast a message. It's being transmitted across every channel the Empire uses. Webb is talking directly to their entire fleet." Rivera pulled up the transmission. Webb's face filled the screen. He looked tired, but determined. Behind him, she could see his bridge crew working at their stations. "Attention, Galactic Empire," Webb said, his voice calm and clear. "You came to our home and demanded we submit. We refused. You tried to destroy us. We survived. You brought more ships, thinking numbers would overwhelm us. You were wrong. But I understand why you keep fighting. You think if you can just kill enough of us, if you can destroy enough of our colonies, eventually we will break. Webb paused, and Rivera saw something dangerous flash in his eyes. So let me make this simple for you, Webb continued. You want to know if we will break? Come and find out. I'm transmitting the coordinates of the Titan Nebula. It's a neutral zone, far from any inhabited systems. I'm challenging you to meet me there. Bring every ship you have. Bring your best commanders. Bring everything the Empire can throw at me. And I will show you exactly what happens when you threaten humanity. The transmission ended. Rivera stared at the screen in disbelief. Webb had just challenged the entire Empire fleet to a single decisive battle. It was either the bravest thing she had ever seen, or the most insane. This time it was Webb calling her directly. Admiral, he said, I know what you're going to say. This is crazy. It's suicide. The Phantom Aegis can't fight 600 ships at once. Then why are you doing this? Rivera demanded. Webb smiled sadly. Because if we keep fighting like this, we'll lose everything slowly. Colony by colony, station by station, and the reactor will fail anyway. But if I can lure the Empire into one battle, one place where I choose the terrain and the conditions, we might have a chance. A small chance. And even if we fail, even if the Phantom Aegis is destroyed, we'll take enough of them with us that maybe they'll decide Earth isn't worth the cost. You're talking about a suicide mission, Rivera said. I'm talking about winning the war, Webb corrected her. Trust me, Admiral. I've been preparing for this since the day we launched. Everything we've done, every battle we've fought, has been building to this moment. The communication ended before Rivera could argue further. She sat back in her chair, feeling helpless. Webb was right about one thing. They couldn't keep fighting the way they had been, but what he was planning seemed impossible. 3 days later, the Battle of the Titan Nebula began. The nebula was a vast cloud of gas and dust, the remains of a star that had died millions of years ago. It was beautiful, glowing in shades of purple and blue, but it was also dangerous. The magnetic fields inside the nebula were chaotic and powerful, strong enough to disrupt sensors and communications. Ships that entered it were essentially fighting blind. Webb had chosen his battlefield perfectly. The Empire fleet arrived first, 600 ships arranged in perfect formation outside the nebula. High Commander Centaur studied the sensor readings with suspicion. The nebula would make communication difficult and sensor accuracy unreliable, but it would affect both sides equally, or so he thought. All ships, enter the nebula, Centaur ordered. Find the human ship and destroy it. The Empire fleet moved forward, disappearing into the glowing clouds. Centaur waited for reports from his advanced scouts. Minutes passed, then hours. His communications officer kept trying to reach the forward ships, but the magnetic interference was worse than expected. All they received was static. Then, suddenly, the Phantom Aegis appeared on their sensors. It was deep inside the nebula, stationary, as if waiting for them. All ships, converge on those coordinates, Centaur ordered. Surround it. Don't let it escape. 200 Empire ships moved to surround the Phantom Aegis. They closed in carefully, weapons charged, shields at maximum. When they were in position, Centaur gave the order to fire. The ships opened up with everything they had. Energy beams, missiles, plasma torpedoes, all converging on the Phantom Aegis's position. The firepower was enough to destroy a planet. But when the weapons cleared, the Phantom Aegis was gone. The sensors had been showing a false image, a decoy created by manipulating the nebula's magnetic fields. The real Phantom Aegis was somewhere else entirely. Sir, we're reading multiple power signatures throughout the nebula, the sensor officer reported. It's like there are dozens of ships in here with us. That's impossible, Centaur growled. There's only one human ship. Find it. But the Empire fleet was discovering what Webb had planned all along. He had spent 3 days before the battle seeding the nebula with thousands of small devices. Each one emitted a false power signature that looked like a ship on sensors. In the interference of the nebula, it was impossible to tell which signals were real and which were fake. The Empire ships were hunting shadows, while the real Phantom Aegis stalked them like a predator in fog. Webb struck from unexpected angles, appearing just long enough to fire, and then vanishing back into the nebula. His crew had prepared for this battle with meticulous detail. They knew every magnetic current in the nebula, every pocket of gas dense enough to hide in, every clear space where weapons would have a clean shot. The Empire knew none of this. They were fighting blind, in terrain they didn't understand, against an enemy who had turned the entire battlefield into a weapon. Commander Park coordinated the drone swarms with deadly precision. The small fighters moved through the nebula like schools of fish, using the magnetic fields to boost their speed and maneuverability. They struck at the Empire ship's weak points, targeting engines and weapon systems. "Target the command ships first," Webb ordered. "Cut off their coordination." The Phantom Aegis emerged from a cloud of purple gas directly behind High Commander Zentar's flagship. At this range, even the Empire's heavy shields couldn't stop the Fold space cannons. The weapons tore through the flagship's hull, destroying its main reactor. Zentar had just enough time to realize he had been completely outmaneuvered before his ship exploded. Without their commander, the Empire fleet began to fall apart. Individual ships tried to fight back, but they were isolated and confused. The Phantom Aegis was everywhere and nowhere, a ghost that struck and vanished. The drones harassed and destroyed any ship that tried to organize a defense. Then Webb activated the final part of his plan. Hidden throughout the nebula were not just sensor decoys, but thousands of kinetic projectiles. Each one accelerated to incredible speeds, using magnetic rails powered by the nebula's own energy fields. They had been positioned over days of careful preparation, waiting for this moment. Webb triggered them all at once. The projectiles shot through the nebula like invisible spears, moving so fast that the Empire ship's sensors barely registered them before impact. The relativistic kinetic energy punched through shields and armor as if they were paper. Ship after ship exploded or was crippled. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 412 Empire ships had been destroyed. The remaining vessels fled in complete disorder, jumping to faster-than-light travel without even trying to recover survivors. The Phantom Aegis floated alone in the Titan Nebula, surrounded by wreckage and the slowly fading glow of destroyed ships. On the bridge, Webb's crew sat in exhausted silence. They had done the impossible. They had defeated the largest fleet the Empire had ever assembled. But Webb knew what it had cost them. The reactor readings were critical. They had pushed the ship far beyond its designed limits. Dr. Okonkwo's warnings had been right. They had won the battle, but the Phantom Aegis was dying. The news of the Battle of the Titan Nebula spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. 412 Empire ships destroyed. The largest military fleet assembled in 3 centuries, defeated by a single human vessel. Species that had submitted to the Empire centuries ago watched the recordings with amazement. Governments that had thought the Empire invincible began to whisper about resistance and independence. Within the Empire itself, chaos erupted. The High Council met in emergency session. They had lost over 600 ships in total, and thousands of their best officers and crew. The military leaders demanded revenge, wanted to gather every remaining ship and burn Earth to ashes. But the civilian leaders, those who controlled trade and economy, looked at the numbers differently. They saw the cost in resources, in lives, in political stability. The Empire was vast, but it was not infinite, After 3 days of heated debate, the council made a decision that would have been unthinkable a month earlier. They sent a diplomatic envoy to Earth. The message was simple. The Empire was willing to negotiate peace. Admiral Rivera received the envoy in the United Earth Defense Headquarters. The alien diplomat was a being that looked like flowing water, held in a humanoid shape. It spoke through a translation device, its voice surprisingly gentle. The Empire recognizes that this conflict has become too costly for both sides, the diplomat said. We propose a treaty. Earth will be granted independent status. No vassalage, no tribute. The Empire will withdraw all forces from your solar system and recognize human sovereignty over your territory. In exchange, Earth agrees to a non-aggression pact and will not interfere with Empire affairs beyond your borders. Rivera listened carefully, looking for the trap. And what guarantee do we have that the Empire won't return in 10 years with a bigger fleet? You have the guarantee of simple economics, the diplomat replied. The Empire has lost too many ships and too many lives trying to conquer one system. The cost exceeds any benefit. Your Phantom Aegis has proven that humanity can defend itself. The Empire does not waste resources on unwinnable wars. Rivera considered this. It was not the unconditional surrender she might have hoped for, but it was more than she had dared dream possible a month ago. Earth would be free, truly free. I need to consult with our world governments, Rivera said. But I believe this proposal will be acceptable. The treaty was signed 2 weeks later. Earth erupted in celebration. Parades filled the streets of every major city. News broadcasts showed crying civilians hugging each other, overwhelmed with relief. Humanity had faced extinction and survived. They had fought an empire and won. The government announced plans for monuments to honor the Phantom Aegis and its crew. There would be statues, museums, ships named after the heroes who had saved humanity. Admiral Rivera made speeches about the courage of Captain Webb and his 800 crew members. They were called the greatest heroes Earth had ever known. But Rivera's celebration was hollow. She kept trying to contact Webb, to coordinate the Phantom Aegis's return to Earth for the victory ceremonies. He kept refusing her calls. When he finally answered, 3 days after the treaty signing, his face on her screen looked tired and strangely distant. Captain Webb, Rivera sent formally, the people of Earth want to honor you and your crew. You deserve a hero's welcome. When will you be returning to Earth orbit? We won't be returning, Admiral, Webb said quietly. Rivera felt a cold chill run down her spine. What do you mean? The war is over. You've won. Come home. We can't come home, Webb said. Not yet. We have one more mission to complete. What mission? Webb, what are you talking about? Webb looked away from the camera for a moment, as if gathering his thoughts. When he looked back, Rivera saw something in his eyes she had never seen before. Not fear exactly, but a deep and profound sadness. I can't explain it now, Webb said, but I need you to trust me one more time, Admiral. Trust that what we're about to do is necessary. Trust that we're doing this for humanity's future, even if you don't understand why. Webb, damn it, tell me what's going on, Rivera demanded. I'm sorry, Webb said. Goodbye, Admiral. Thank you for everything. The transmission ended. Rivera immediately tried to call back, but the Phantom Aegis had cut off all communications. She ordered her tracking stations to monitor the ship's position. For the next 6 hours, they watched the massive vessel moving through the solar system, heading away from Earth. Then Dr. Sarah Okonkwo burst into Rivera's office without knocking, her face pale with shock. Chen, I just received Webb's final engineering report, Sarah said, her hands shaking as she held up a data pad. He sent it through encrypted channels. It's classified at the highest level. I think I'm the only person besides you who's supposed to see it. What does it say? Rivera asked, though part of her didn't want to know. Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper. The reactor is failing. Not slowly, critically. Webb has been deliberately destabilizing it for the past 2 weeks. And Chen, there's more. Things about the technology we use to build the Phantom Aegis. Things about where it really came from. Rivera took the datapad and began to read. With each paragraph, her blood ran colder. The crashed probe from 70 years ago, the one that had given humanity the technology to build the Phantom Aegis, hadn't been from a dead civilization. It had been a test, a beacon, designed to see how species responded when given advanced technology. If they used it wisely, the creators of the beacon would make contact. If they used it for violence and conquest, the creators would eliminate them. Oh God, Rivera breathed. We used their technology to build a warship, to fight a war. Worse than that, Sarah said. The probe wasn't just technology, it was alive in a way. When the crew was exposed to it during construction, it changed them, enhanced them. Webb and his people aren't entirely human anymore. There's something in between. And Webb knows that if the Empire learns the truth about where we got our technology, they'll tell the beacon's creators. Or worse, the creators might already know. What is Webb planning to do? He's going to find the beacon's origin point, Sarah said. He's going to try to return the technology and convince the creators that humanity didn't know what it was doing, that we found wreckage and got lucky, nothing more. He's going to try to protect Earth from a threat we didn't even know existed. By doing what? Rivera demanded. By disappearing, Sarah said quietly. The Phantom Aegis, the crew, all evidence of the advanced technology. If it all vanishes, Earth can claim ignorance. We can say we built the ship with our own technology, that it was destroyed in the final battle. The creators might believe us. They might leave us alone. Rivera felt tears burning in her eyes. He's going to sacrifice himself and his entire crew to save us from something that might not even be coming? He believes it's coming, Sarah said, and I think he might be right. Chen, there's one more thing in the report. Webb says they detected signals when they were inside the Titan Nebula. Signals that match the beacon's signature. Something knows we use the technology. Something is watching. Before Rivera could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the headquarters. Lieutenant Morrison's voice came over the intercom, urgent and confused. Admiral, the Phantom Aegis just activated its fold space drive at maximum power. The energy readings are off the scale. They're creating some kind of, we don't even know what to call it. A wormhole, maybe. It's stable, but barely. And Admiral, the ship is entering it. Rivera ran to the command center, Sarah close behind her. The main holographic display showed the Phantom Aegis surrounded by a swirling vortex of twisted space-time. It looked like reality itself was being torn open, revealing something beyond normal space. Then the ship began to broadcast one final message. It wasn't directed at Earth specifically. It was being transmitted on every frequency, in every language humanity knew, and probably several they didn't. It was Webb's voice, calm and clear. To all of humanity, he said. For 40 years, 800 of us lived in secret, so that billions could live in safety. We fought when fighting was needed. We're leaving now because leaving is needed. Don't look for us. Don't try to follow. Remember us if you want, forget us if you must. But know this. We did it all for you. For humanity, for the future, for the secrets that must remain hidden. Thank you for letting us serve. Goodbye. The Phantom Aegis entered the wormhole. For a moment, the massive ship seemed to stretch and distort, as if it was being pulled across impossible distances. Then, it was gone. The wormhole collapsed in on itself, leaving nothing behind. No debris, no trace, no way to track where it had gone. On Earth, billions of people watched in confusion and shock. They had been preparing for victory parades. Now their heroes had vanished without explanation, leaving only questions behind. In the command center, Rivera stood in silence, tears running down her face. She understood what Webb had done, even if nobody else did. He had won the war, and then erased the evidence of how he had won it. He had taken all of humanity's dangerous secrets and disappeared with them, protecting Earth from threats it didn't even know existed. Lieutenant Morrison approached her cautiously. "Admiral, what do we tell people? They're asking what happened. Where did the Phantom Aegis go?" Rivera wiped her eyes and straightened her uniform. When she spoke, her voice was steady, the voice of a military commander who had been trained to make impossible decisions. "Tell them the truth," she said, "or at least the truth as it will be recorded. The Phantom Aegis's reactor failed during the final battle. The ship was too damaged to return to Earth. Captain Webb and his crew performed one last service for humanity. They took the failing reactor far from inhabited space to prevent any danger to civilian populations. They died as heroes, saving us one final time." "Is that what really happened?" Morrison asked quietly. Rivera looked at him steadily. "That's what happened, Lieutenant. That's what will be in all the official reports. That's what the monuments will say. Do you understand?" Morrison nodded slowly. "Yes, Admiral, I understand." As he left to make the announcement, Sarah moved close to Rivera and spoke softly. "Do you think he made it? Do you think Webb found what he was looking for?" Rivera looked at the empty space on the display, where the Phantom Aegis had been just moments before. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I know Marcus Webb. He's the most stubborn, brilliant, and crazy person I've ever met. If anyone could find alien gods and convince them to leave humanity alone, it would be him." "And if he couldn't?" Sarah asked. Rivera's expression hardened. "Then 800 heroes bought us time. Time to grow stronger. Time to prepare. Time to become the kind of species that doesn't need protecting anymore." She turned away from the display and walked to her office. Inside, she locked the door and pulled out the data pad containing Webb's report. For a long moment, she stared at it. Then she began the process of encrypting it with the highest security protocols Earth possessed. This information would be buried so deep that only future admirals of Earth defense would even know it existed. Because some secrets, Rivera realized, were meant to protect the people who didn't know them. And the 800 crew members of the Phantom Aegis had just become humanity's greatest secret. 50 years had passed since the Phantom Aegis vanished into the unknown. Earth had changed in ways that would have seemed impossible during those dark days of the war. Humanity had expanded throughout the solar system and beyond, establishing colonies on dozens of worlds. The technology that had once seemed so miraculous was now commonplace. Children learned about fold space drives in school the same way earlier generations had learned about combustion engines. The Galactic Empire still existed, but it was different now. Earth's defiance had inspired others. 17 species had gained independence in the decades following the war. The Empire had slowly transformed from an authoritarian regime into something more like a confederation of equals. Some historians said humanity had changed the galaxy just by refusing to submit. Others said the change would have happened eventually anyway. But everyone agreed on one thing: the Phantom Aegis and its crew were legends. Statues of Captain Marcus Webb stood in parks across Earth. Schools, ships, and space stations bore the names of the 800 crew members. Children played games where they pretended to be the brave heroes who had saved humanity. The story had been told and retold so many times that it had become mythology. The official story was simple and heroic. The Phantom Aegis had fought the Empire to a standstill. Then, damaged beyond repair, and with its reactor failing, Captain Webb had taken the ship far from inhabited space to die safely. The crew had sacrificed themselves one final time to protect the people they loved. It was a beautiful story, an inspiring story, and like most official stories, it was not quite the whole truth. Admiral Chen Rivera lay in a hospital bed, dying. She was 102 years old, and her body had simply worn out. The doctors had done everything they could with their advanced medical technology. Eventually, Everyone ran out of time. She didn't mind dying. She had lived a full life, had seen humanity grow from a species that barely reached the stars to one that now walked among them as equals. She had grandchildren who would never know the fear of alien invasion. She had done her duty, and now she was tired. But there was one last secret she needed to share. "Is the recording device ready?" she asked the young officer standing beside her bed. The woman nodded. She was Commander Sarah Chen, Rivera's granddaughter, and she wore the uniform of Earth Defense with the same pride her grandmother once had. "It's ready, grandmother," Sarah said gently. "But are you sure about this? Once you record it, once it's in the files—" "It needs to be recorded," Rivera said firmly. "The next admiral needs to know. Every admiral from now on needs to know. The truth can't die with me." Sarah activated the recording device. A small light blinked, indicating it was capturing everything. Rivera took a slow breath and began to speak. "My name is Admiral Chen Rivera, United Earth Defense Command. This is my final classified report, to be opened only by the sitting Admiral of Earth Defense. What I'm about to reveal is the truth about the Phantom Aegis, about Captain Marcus Webb and his crew, and about the real reason they disappeared." For the next hour, Rivera told the whole story. She explained about the crashed probe from 70 years before the war, the beacon that had been testing humanity. She described Dr. Akakwo's final report, the warnings about the reactor, and the terrible truth about what the technology had done to Webb and his crew. She explained Webb's real mission, not to die heroically, but to find the creators of the beacon and protect Earth from a threat the public had never known existed. When she finished, Rivera felt exhausted but relieved. The burden of the secret had been heavy for 50 years. Now, it would be someone else's responsibility. "There's one more thing," Rivera said. She reached under her pillow and pulled out a small device. It looked ancient, a relic from 50 years ago, but it still functioned. 3 days before I die, this device will activate. Marcus Webb left it with me. He said it contained a message, encrypted with quantum keys, that would only unlock at a specific time. That time is today. Sarah took the device carefully. "What do you think it says?" "I don't know," Rivera admitted, "but I need you to open it for me. I need to know if he succeeded. I need to know if those 800 people died for nothing, or if they saved us from something terrible." Sarah activated the device. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the screen flickered to life. Text appeared, simple and direct. Sarah read it aloud, her voice shaking slightly. "If you're reading this, then 50 years have passed, and the quantum timer has released this message. I'm writing this just before we enter the wormhole, just before we go to find the beings who created the technology that saved Earth and might destroy it. I need you to understand something. The probe we found wasn't an accident. It was a test. The beings who created it seed the galaxy with these tests, waiting to see how species react when given power beyond their understanding. Species that use the technology wisely are welcomed into a greater community. Species that use it for conquest and violence are eliminated, not as punishment, but as protection for everyone else. We use their technology to build a weapon, to fight a war. That would mark us as dangerous. The beings who created the probe would come to Earth and judge us. And based on our actions, we would probably fail that judgment. We're going to explain that humanity didn't know what the probe was. We're going to return their technology and ask them to give Earth another chance. And if they refuse, if they decide humanity is too dangerous to exist, then we're going to disappear with all evidence of what we've done. The Phantom Aegis will become a legend, a story of a ship built with human ingenuity that saved Earth and then died heroically. You're probably wondering if we succeeded. Here's how you'll know. If you're reading this message, and Earth still exists, and no alien gods have arrived to judge humanity, then we succeeded. Silence is victory. Our absence is our gift to you. We found them. We negotiated. We made a deal. I can't tell you more than that, because this message might be intercepted someday. But know this, the 800 of us are still out there, somewhere. We're doing what we've always done, protecting humanity from threats it doesn't know exist. We're the watchers in the darkness, the shields you don't see. If we ever return to Earth, it means we failed. It means something so terrible is coming that we need to warn you. Pray you never see us again, Admiral. Our eternal absence is the greatest victory we could give you. Tell my mother I love her, if she's still alive. Tell all our families we think of them. And tell humanity to keep reaching for the stars, but to do it with wisdom and kindness. The galaxy is watching. Make us proud. Captain Marcus Webb, UEDS Phantom Aegis. Final log entry. We're entering the wormhole now. Whatever happens next, it's been an honor to serve. The message ended. Sarah lowered the device, tears in her eyes. Rivera was crying too, but she was also smiling. 50 years, Rivera whispered. 50 years of silence. They did it. They actually did it. They found alien gods and convinced them to leave us alone. But grandmother, Sarah said carefully, if they're still out there, still protecting us, shouldn't we try to help them? Shouldn't we try to bring them home? Rivera shook her head firmly. No. We leave them alone. That was the deal Webb made. He and his crew stay out there, doing whatever terrible, dangerous work needs to be done. And we stay here, building the kind of civilization that deserves their sacrifice. That's how we honor them. Not with statues and parades, but by becoming better than we were. Rivera lay back on her pillow, feeling peace settle over her. She had carried the secret for 50 years, terrified that Webb had failed, that the alien gods would come and humanity would be destroyed. But they hadn't come. 50 years of silence meant 50 years of success. Make sure that message gets into the classified files, Rivera said. Every admiral needs to know. Every admiral needs to understand that somewhere out there, 800 of our people are still fighting for us. Still protecting us. They're the secret guardians of humanity. Sarah promised, I will. Rivera closed her eyes. She could almost see them, the Phantom Aegis and its crew, somewhere in the deep darkness between stars. Fighting battles nobody would ever know about. Facing threats that would never reach Earth. 800 heroes who had chosen eternal exile over eternal glory. Thank you, Marcus, she whispered. Thank you all. 3 days later, Admiral Chen Rivera died peacefully in their sleep. Her funeral was attended by thousands. The current admiral gave a speech about her service, her courage, her leadership during the war, and the 50 years of peace that followed. But the admiral didn't mention the classified files she had just read, the message from a ghost ship, or the truth about 800 people who had vanished to save billions. Some secrets were meant to be kept. 50 light-years from Earth, in a region of space that had no name on any map, the UEDS Phantom Aegis floated in the darkness. The ship looked different than it had 50 years ago. It had been modified, rebuilt, enhanced with technology that would seem like magic to the people of Earth. The crew still numbered exactly 800, though they had changed too. They were no longer entirely human, but they still remembered being human. They still remembered why they had chosen this path. Captain Marcus Webb stood on the bridge, looking at a view screen that showed a threat approaching from deep space. Something that would destroy Earth and 100 other worlds if it wasn't stopped here and now. Something that the Galactic Empire couldn't fight. Something that only the Phantom Aegis and its eternally vigilant crew could handle. All hands to battle stations, Webb ordered calmly. Looks like we have work to do. The crew responded instantly, moving to their positions with the perfect coordination of people who had fought together for 50 years. They didn't complain. They didn't question. They had made their choice a long time ago. Commander Park smiled at Webb from her station. "Think Earth knows what we're doing out here?" "They don't need to know," Webb replied. "They just need to be safe. That's enough." The Phantom Aegis powered up its weapons, systems that had been designed to fight things far worse than the Galactic Empire. The ship moved forward to meet the threat, a ghost defending the living, a legend protecting those who thought it was only a story. Back on Earth, people went about their lives, unaware of the battle being fought in their name. Children played in parks built on worlds that would have been destroyed if not for 800 people nobody remembered were still alive. Families grew and loved and dreamed of the future, protected by guardians they would never meet. And once every 50 years, a signal reached Earth from deep space. Just a carrier wave, no message, just an ID code. The UEDS Phantom Aegis, still out there, still on mission, still protecting humanity from the darkness between the stars. The admirals who received that signal understood what it meant. It meant the deal was still in place. It meant the Watchers were still watching. It meant 800 heroes were still fighting, still sacrificing, still loving the species they had chosen to protect from afar. It meant humanity was safe, and that was the greatest victory anyone could ask for.